it's harder and harder to get for our annual budgets, and this kind of donation is the sweetest music to our ears. Thank you very much. And Mr. Singer now, of course, has a few words to say.
Oh, well, okay. I know all of these wonderful people personally, and they've really provided a home for me at Temple Bethel, which really means house of God, I believe, literally. It first came into, I think it was used in connection with Jacob, the story of Jacob. The Jewish community goes back to the late 19th century here, and it had quite a few synagogues, a very interesting history, which I think has yet to be written up. I've met many of the people that have come back, like Esther Bubley. She's a renowned, internationally known photographer, one of the first great women photographers. She worked for Life magazine. She's in many books of photography. Their earliest memories were of going to the library and reading books there in the children's room, horror book, all kinds of books, and they told me about them. Dr. I.H. Levine, he, I think, gives a couple $100 every year as a donation automatically. His memories were of coming to the library and reading books. The value placed on reading and education and learning and books that comes from the Jewish tradition, I think, is very strong. And that's part of the reason why so much value is placed on learning. These two people, all of these people have really embodied this faith. And I know as the last president of Temple Bethel, Lenore worked so hard and did such a heroic job, and it's the fact that they had to close it had an awful effect. These two people, I didn't know them that well personally, but I knew them. David Kaner, if he were a Catholic, would be a saint. He'd be called a saint. If he were a Protestant, he'd be called saved or born again or something like that. I guess the best Jewish expression would be a tzaddik or a lamed vavnik, which means a very just and righteous person. And there's a book, I put a couple of books there that always when I read them or when I talked with David Kaner, it's in the, I put it in the drawer there. One of them is called, I'll get it later maybe, but one of them is called The Assistant, and it's a novel about a grocer, small grocer, I think probably living in Brooklyn, who is terrorized by people that he's trying to help. And ultimately, he dies. He dies very unjustly, I believe by violence. It's been a long time since I've read the novel. But every time when I think of David Kaner, and I used to see him occasionally at the old synagogue on 6th Street, I thought of that particular story. He is a very just man, very kind man, very good person, always giving charity, who by some decree had to die violently. And he was, it was a very tragic death. And the fact that he took upon himself so much compassion for those in need or those with financial difficulties and always tried to accommodate their needs makes him very special to me. He's the sort of person you only meet once or twice in a lifetime. I think that what I hope to do is to get some books or a few books that convey something of the spirit that David, the spirit of charity and the spirit that I think is in David Kaner, that is really something special. And with Zelda Sachs, I didn't know her that well, but I remember eating at a restaurant, and she was nearby, and we started talking. And as you said, Dr. Gaboriault, she's been here for 46 years. I didn't know the amount of time, and I appreciate your mentioning that.
Close to that.
Close to that, but as we talked, she sort of reflected upon, she was in a reflective mood. I had some time, and she was sort of telling the history of the library, and in a sense, the history of Superior. And she went back to the 20s, and of course she knew, I think she started working here as a page. And so she knew everybody from about the turn of the century that was retiring, all of the early people that were working at the library, to all of the people that were, well, in the 80s or whatever it was that she retired. So she had within her consciousness and her memory and in her experience sort of a capsulated history of this of the public library, better than anything written down, I think, because she knew everyone personally. And so what I got from my wonderful conversation with her, as I was mostly listening, was a kind of compendium of the history of the library. And somehow it made me think of a fairly obscure rabbi from the Talmud, Rabbi Tarfon, who said something very interesting about her work and about the work of the Talmud that he was working on. He said something like this: "It is not incumbent upon us to complete the task, but neither are we free to desist from it." So, which means basically that the work of the Talmud or the work of learning or whatever work that we're doing keeps going on forever and ever. There's always kind of new things that we have to do, new challenges, and her challenges were of several different generations, new changes in library services, new libraries, things like that. And you can never complete all the changes, because there's so many new things that it's unfinished. But on the other hand, he said, but neither are we free to desist from it. In other words, we can't really give up and do nothing. In other words, we have to do something even if we can't finish the job ever. So this is sort of the spirit of what I think is of the library. I think it's the spirit of Zelda Sachs, as I heard her that afternoon. And I think it's the spirit of the books, of the Talmud. They just keep going on for century after century. And basically it's uncompleted books or series of books that are never ended because they're constantly developing based on new historical experiences. So with that in mind, I hope that that we can possibly get fresh, new types of information, especially in reference, which I think she had a special feeling for, and apply some of this generous donation for that purpose so that we can keep up. And at the same time, we have to realize that we're not going to ever finish the job. So that's basically what I wanted to say, but I especially wanted to thank all of you individually for this very thoughtful and generous donation.
Unlike Barry and Dr. Gaboriault, I did not have a chance to know either of these people personally. I came to Superior in 1986 and started my work here right out of library school. And one of the first things I did, barely 5 months after I came here, was to receive David Kingner's picture and to have it hang in the children's room. And it was then I was first introduced to him and through the people who knew him. In talking with these people, I found that he seemed to be a very trusting person who greatly loved his job. He would get up in the middle of the night if you needed groceries desperately, and would open his store and let you get what you needed to get through the night. I've also learned that he did love children immensely, and that makes me especially proud because I do like working with children. And through this wonderful donation, we'll be able to continue his love of children by purchasing materials and getting the children of Superior interested and continue their interest in reading and learning and growing and sharing. It's
I'd like to add that it never hurts to give credit where credit is due. And I feel that something this library and many other libraries have always done is put little tags on the front or inside anything that's purchased with special funds to show in whose honor it was purchased and through whose generosity it was purchased. And of course we will do that. We're very happy to do that. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I do. I've only got 2 months more to be talking like this, so I take the opportunity. I was